get a chair as well for you. Like I'm like talking down to you or something.
Yeah, just like the smallest interviewer ever.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, if you can just like, I just kind of wanted to know like the story of how it, like the space came about. So, sort of how it started off, how it was before, and then what you kind of did to like kickstart this project and why.
Yeah, so before this actual space, it was houses in the 80s. They got took down, then it was made into a park when I was a little kid. I don't remember the park, so I'll say little.
Yeah.
And then in 2001, this was built, and the local people call it the butterfly, because there's a butterfly brickwork on the floor. And then about 9 years ago, it was locked, because there were a lot of kind of people who drank quite a lot, took a lot of drugs, and a way of kind of deterring those people, they locked the space. That didn't work. They ripped up the boards on the top of the benches to stop them. But obviously the people who actually utilised the space a lot were the ones missing out, as opposed to the ones who were kind of ruining it for everyone else. And then it never really, nothing happened with it. It just stayed locked for ages. And we've always wanted to do something. We've got big dogs, so we'd bring them over and like lift them over so they could run around, because it was locked as well. And then there was a bit of, I think, jostling between my dad and the council a bit. So they'd put a lock on, he'd break it. They'd put a new lock on, he'd break their lock. It kept going back and forth. But the council would come and like trim all of this, especially in the summer, like high summer, early autumn. They'd come and trim this space every couple of weeks, which seems so pointless because no one's actually in the space and utilising it. So just leave it to grow wild if you're going to do anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, about 4 years ago, I returned from some work that I was doing. I started getting into gardening. I wanted to kind of utilise this space and kind of give it a bit of a purpose. Message the council. They had plans of building new properties on here again. That fell through. As soon as Corona kicked off, I was like, ha ha ha. Message them again. Can't say no. They didn't say no. Took them a little while to get back to me about it, but yeah, about end of May, beginning of June last year, they gave us the all clear. That was kind of late in the growing season, so this year's where it's all kicked off, and now we're just kind of, yeah, planting and just doing as much as we can as we go along, and kind of, it's a bit hodgepodged.
Yeah. So like, was it like your dad then that inspired you, do you think, or is it like you have a love for gardening and do you like have a garden at home, or?
Yeah, so I've got I don't think my dad inspired me to do it. I
Yeah.
just thought it was quite funny that it was kind of going back and forth. I think maybe in terms of like actually approaching the council, there was maybe that inspiration there, or you know, that kind of seed was sown in being like, okay, maybe we should do something with this space, because he was constantly kind of, you know, trying to get into it. I didn't really start gardening until about 4 or 5 years ago. We've always had like, you know, proper stone slab front garden, nothing in it. And I started growing, and no idea why. I think I've just always enjoyed being in the outdoors, and it's the first time I had a bit of extra cash, so I started growing, realised I enjoyed the space, like being outside and kind of the fruits of my labour, if you were.
Yeah.
And then kind of remembering this space as a kid, being like, it's literally just such a shame. And then I started applying for allotments, and I was like, oh, but it'd be sick to have something here. And I think the biggest thing that actually spurred it on was, so I'm on Cosby, but Radbourne's just the one over there, like kind of attached at the bottom of 3 other streets, and I think they're called maisonettes. You know, the one where they're like flat apartments, you got the bottom on the top. Yeah. So all the top properties have the back gardens, which are south facing, so perfect for gardens, for sun, like the most, you know, ideal. It's what you want. The bottom properties are north facing, so they get very little sun. It's usually quite wet, quite damp. Not the most ideal for gardens, but you can still do stuff with it if you have the appropriate plants. It wasn't that much of an eyesore, personally. I didn't think. They were okay. There were some beautiful gardens on there, and then all of a sudden one day the council was just ripping up all the grass, concreting over.
Oh no.
And I just got so annoyed. Like, I just saw red, because the closest house to us on Radbourne, there used to be a woman who lived there, and she passed, and she had the most beautiful garden, and that was the first one to go as well, and they just ripped it up, and I was like, I genuinely just don't know why you would do that.
Yeah.
If you want to like uproot the gardens, do the ones that are kind of messy. So I think it was that. I think there's an element of kind of jabbing back at what happened to those houses, and there were some people of that community on that street that were saying like, now I've had to fork out X amount of money to actually plant again because I can't plant directly into the ground. I've got to buy pots, I've got to buy like extra tools and all this sort of stuff, and like new seeds or whatever. And they didn't really want it to happen. A lot of them didn't. So I think really it was kind of my own grievances of what happened, and also them kind of moaning to me about it, that made me go like, let's actually try and do something here. So people who haven't got the money, because they don't have the money, can kind of come here and do something, even if they don't have loads.
Yeah. So like, how often like do you come to the space then? Is it quite a lot or?
Yeah, I think it's every day I personally come into it, but I think it's because I shouldn't be, but I semi-treat it as if it's my front garden, in terms of like, I'll come out in my slippers and I'll have a cup of tea. Do you know what I mean?
That's really nice though.
But I think the main reason why I do it is because the more active we were last year, and people were out doing stuff, even if it wasn't much that we were doing, the more conversations started happening. I've lived here like pretty much my whole life, apart from 1 year that I was away, and I didn't know most of my neighbours. And since last year, I know most people who kind of walk past now. I know them by name, like I see them all the time, like we talk, do you know what I mean? Before, I would literally, the only time I'd leave my house is if I were to walk to work, and I'd never kind of interact with Sneinton itself really, because this is like pretty much on the outskirts of Sneinton, close to town. I just walk straight to town, so I didn't really know anyone. So kind of me coming out here, even if it is for a cup of tea, although it kind of feels a little bit like, I love it, is because I want to make sure that kind of conversation continues, because it's needed, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's like increases like your community sort of like interaction, I suppose.
Yeah.
So like, do you have like plans for the space in terms of that as well? Is this primarily to sort of like grow plants or veg, or like are you gonna have events here or anything like that?
I think first and foremost it's a garden, so it will always it will always look at the green aspect of it first and kind of grow in, and people getting involved and that side of stuff. But 100% I do want other things to happen here. Last year people would work out on here, do like little training sessions. I've had conversations with other artists locally and people who kind of run things like yoga classes and stuff, and talking about things that can actually happen in this space. We've got a nice like open concrete section just over there, which, you know, once it's cleaned a little bit, and if we can get some sort of structure that can kind of, you know, get rid of the rain a little bit and protect us from it, we can host events here. Obviously that's been really hard to navigate in Corona, but it's definitely something that I want to move forward. I want it to be, I don't just want it to be, oh, that nice pretty space that's got flowers and stuff, although being the main purpose, I want it to be a community space. Do you know what I mean? So things happen here. So like you said, events, and that might be art events, that might be workshop events, it might be just fitness things like PT sessions or yoga classes, it might just be like painting banners, or even just coming for a cup of tea and a chat. Do you know what I mean? Like book reading stuff. Anything that people want to do, just as long as I don't have to organise it. It's a bit too much.
Yeah, sure. So I just got one more question. So it's just like a bit more of an emotional question, I suppose, but it's like, how does the space like make you feel like when you come here?
Good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, of course it does. Like seeing your work, all the effort that you've put in. I think with gardening in particular, just seeing the things that you've grown grow and change and kind of die and come back to life, and how you see the space change and evolve over time, that's really, really rewarding. But I think the biggest thing that I really enjoy is actually seeing the response from people who walk past, who, you know, when things negatively affect the space, like people stealing stuff, or, you know, kind of rip a couple of things up and kind of ruin it a little bit there, they get their backs up about it, because it's effectively an attack on them as well. Do you know what I mean? It's their space. Although these people might not necessarily come into the space and do stuff, they're still participating, because they want to have a say in what's going on, and they enjoy it, and more people are walking down here now because they're taking an interest. So it makes me feel great, but I love the fact that it makes other people feel great as well. I think that's the best part of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much.